Hello and welcome to the show. This is the Next Sun, the feature on the Dennison Show. We have on the studio line Owen Paul. Good day to you, and very
How are you,
nice.
sir?
I'm very well, and
Nice to hear it.
it's very nice and exciting to have you on my radio feature.
Thank you.
And
Pleasure
Owen,
to be here.
that's lovely to hear. And Owen Paul is a household name. And in your adolescence, did you have any idea what your career path would be, or where you
Uh,
wanted to
a, li-
take
a,
it?
a little bit. Not. I never for 1 second thought about being a musician or a singer or a songwriter. I was very much into football when I was at school, and I was pretty good at it as well. I was quite fast, I think, if
Yeah.
I recall. And I got signed when I was 12 to Glasgow Celtic professionally.
Oh,
So I thought that was going to be my career path, and then punk music happened and changed everything.
wonderful. It's kind of like the same story as Gordon Ramsay. He started with a footballer, injured his leg, and his dreams of a career were shattered in football. But he went on to be a successful like chef and restaurateur. So
Well, indeed he did. He did well. I mean, I think he was originally at the opposite team in Glasgow. He was signed to Glasgow Rangers, I think, when he was
yes,
young.
yeah,
But anyway, he's not looked back, has he?
that's it. Could it be fate? That's what I was trying
Indeed.
to get at. And did you find when you were a musician singer, did you find you worked better as a solo artist rather than being in a group or pop band?
Very much so. I joined a band, first of all, while I was still at school when I was 15, and everybody in the sort of late 70s were doing that when punk happened. Everyone thought, well, I can have a go at this, because it's very much like that. And for a long time, I enjoyed being in a band, but I always imagined the songs in my head because I was the main writer. And then when I imagined them in my head, the band obviously would add their own thing and play them differently. So over time, I began to, become tired of that. And I thought, I'm going to have to try and make a record myself. And when I became a solo act, things moved a lot quicker as far as getting a record deal and getting on television and stuff. And when I was recording, because it was the advent of computer recordings, I could actually, play most of the instruments myself and get it pretty much how I imagined it in my head in the first place. So that was the main reason why I moved on from being in a band.
Cool. And your most recognisable song, "Favourite Waste of Time," was a number 3 hit in 1986.
It was.
And am I right? It was a cover version, a gentleman called Marshall Crenshaw.
Yeah, that's correct. I mean, basically what happened was again, a bit like a lot of my career, it was pretty much unplanned. And then the night before a recording session that I had booked, I heard a little snippet of the song sung by Bette Midler, and I really became obsessed. It was just the chorus bit I heard, you're my favorite. That's all I heard. And I became so obsessed with it, I was up all night. Then I spoke to my management in the morning, said, listen, I've heard this little bit of a chorus. Can you find out who wrote it and how the rest of the song goes?
Yeah,
Because I didn't know. And they tracked it down and found out it was Marshall Crenshaw, and that it had been a B-side on one of his records, and the same for Bette Midler. She'd done it as a B-side. And then when I got the full version, I then added new words, changed a middle eight section that was not there before, changed different sections and added and made it my own. So it became a co-write in effect.
amazing. I've actually got here in my notes that the B side was 1982. "Someday, Someway." I think it was a B
Ah,
side.
there you go. See, you know more than me.
I've done my homework, and isn't it fascinating how certain songs released a few years later exceed better than the originals? Like say Yazoo's "Only You," covered by the Flying Pickets,
Yeah,
and then Prince's "Nothing Compared to You," done by Sinead O'Connor, "Tears for Fears, Mad World," and then was a number 1 hit for Gary Jules in 2003.
yeah, I think you're right. I think it's not always the case that the first and the original version is the best.
Mm,
So it was certainly worked in my case, and Marshall Crenshaw was very grateful for me doing it. Believe
mm.
me.
And I read somewhere, not that I believe everything I read, but was Crenshaw quite vocal of your rendition?
He wasn't to begin with. I mean, he was quite difficult in the early stages of negotiating because he didn't want me mentioned as a songwriter. So that was a bit dodgy, I would say, because clearly, if you hear the both versions, there's different sections, there's different words, there's different music going on. So it's clearly not the way it was in the original. But then I read him in the Melody Maker some years later, like in the 90s. A friend of mine showed me a piece when Marshall Crenshaw had done a gig in London. And he sang the song at one of his gigs and said, thanks to Owen Paul, I made $2.5 million
Mm,
last year. Well done, him.
interesting. And the song features a famous snake on guitar, Fender bassist Mark Luckhurst.
It does indeed, yes. I discovered Mark. I'm taking the credit for that. And he was. I auditioned a lot of people before I made records, and I wanted to get a backing band unit as such. So I took a long time over it, and I liked Mark's bass playing very, very much. And then when I stopped making records, he moved on to Thunder and great success. Very happy for him.
Brilliant. And the B-side to that track as well, Just Another Day, on
Yes.
that's quite an elegant, cool track to Favourite Waste of Time.
Yes, it's one of those things that and it appears on my album as well of that time, an album called As It Is in 1986. It's one of the giveaways that always not well, to be honest, because it's, as you say, it's nothing like the popness of My Favourite Waste of Time. And I wasn't really a pop guy; I was a rock guy. And that's obviously where I started to get into fighting with the record company. They wanted me to make more pop records. I didn't. I wanted to make a rock record, and then they wouldn't fund my projects unless I did it their way. And that's when I decided to step back from the music scene.
Sure. And on the vinyl cover, it's a couple on a beach watching the sun go down. Was that exotic location somewhere shot?
That was actually shot from the video and it's in Gran Canaria.
Oh, nice.
In the Canary Islands.
So you told us a little bit about My Favourite Time.
Yeah.
And you certainly have had a remarkable career. And I just want to touch on that memorable television appearance at Pebble Mill.
Yay.
And where they didn't turn up the instrumental backing accompaniment.
Yeah, I mean, it was very basic. I mean, if you were watching TV at home, you'd think something bad was going wrong or I was throwing an attitude and not doing it. But basically, it was very, very simple. If you were watching at home, you could hear the track and you could see a guy not joining in, right? But from my perspective, I had no track playing in my speakers whatsoever. So I couldn't hear anything. And the cameras, when you're doing television, the cameras have got the red light on, so you know they're filming you. And when I realised the track didn't come on, I'm thinking, switch that red light off, for God's sake. And then it just kept coming closer and closer and closer. And it was like the longest 70 seconds of my life.
Yeah.
But it didn't do me any harm, actually, because I ended up becoming a talking point around the country, and it was getting mentioned in the news and in newspapers and radio stations all over the country. So it really helped My Favourite Waste of Time to become a success.
And when they say people are talking about you, that's not necessarily a bad thing either.
It certainly wasn't in that case, for sure.
And it was like you were playing musical statues. The audience were in hysterics. And was it a kind of stand against the way TV make you do things? You have to do this and do that, for example. Mime, pretend to play.
Yes, I mean it wasn't a protest about that, but it might have looked like it was.
Yeah.
My manager thought I was refusing to mime, but it was quite simple. I could not hear the music or the singing or anything, and I just didn't know what to do. And I thought, I'm not going to jump around complaining live on TV, waving my arms and stuff. I thought I'll just stand really still, and they'll switch the camera off. Unfortunately, they didn't switch the camera off quick enough.
So thank you. That's nipped in the bud, as they say. And how important is it to have a sense of humour in this industry, the music industry?
I think it's important to have a sense of humour in any industry, to be honest, and even just personally. Never to take yourself too seriously. There's going to be a lot of people that have got enough to say bad things about you that you've got to laugh it off. As much as you get a lot of credit and you get a lot of success and plaudits as such, you can take them both with a pinch of salt. So you get critiqued or criticised for one thing, and I'll give you an example of the paradox of this, right? I remember getting awarded in some award ceremony thing, best new artist and worst new artist in the same year. That tells you all you need to know. You've got to laugh at yourself.
Yeah. And not many people also know you've had other hits, like 4 top 100 hits, including Mad About the Girl and Pleased to Meet You. And I like the kind of concept in the video to Pleased to Meet You. It was kind of storytelling about like record companies and deals. And I believe at one point you're even busking outside a record company. That's a good way to attract attention.
Yeah, well, I mean, you're right. I mean, that was my first single, and it did reach the top 100, and it got a lot of rave reviews, which was good, and critical acclaim. And the basic premise of the video was the tale of me travelling down from Scotland to London, trying to play in a few bars, busking in the high street, whatever it took to get a record deal, and that's what happened.
Amazing. I remember watching a video. I think Bronski Beat. They were travelling on a train from Glasgow, and
Yes.
they were coming off the train, and they meant business. The way they just come off the train and like, we're here. We've arrived in London.
Yeah, watch out, world.
That's the one, yes. And on to more recently, you've also collaborated with Mike Rutherford on the Rewired as a backing
Yes.
vocalist and vocal arranger.
Yeah, and that was quite strange. And there was, I think it was around 2001. I'd been recording in a studio with a guy called Peter Van Hook, who was the drummer on the Mike and the Mechanics, and he was a producer who produced Tanita to Kairam and others. And Mike Rutherford visited the studio to see Peter, and he heard some of my stuff. And Mike is very, very posh, and it's like, dear boy, who did the vocals on these? And I was like, that's me, Mike. He went, and did you arrange the singing on the track? And I was like, yes. He said, would you like to be involved in the new Mike and the Mechanics album? I was like, blimey, yeah. And then it got even better then. So, in effect, Mike and the Mechanics would send me the tracks with no singing on it whatsoever, other than Paul Carrick. And then I'd have to arrange them and do whatever I wanted. And then they could choose what they liked and what they didn't, right? So the album then became very successful. And then he called me again and said, Owen, would you like to go on a world tour with us with Phil Collins? Again, I was like, I'm packing my bags, Mike, as we speak.
Great.
So it was a fantastic time. And as you can imagine, playing football stadiums all around the world with Mike and the Mechanics and Phil Collins, and getting to sing with Paul Carrick, Mike Rutherford, and the songs Over My Shoulder, The Living Years. I mean, come on, it just couldn't get any better.
Good times. Now, on to 2020, what year it's been. Have you found you've always been in music? You haven't really gone away. But has 2020 been a somewhat career revival to an extent for you?
It has, and it has obviously in an accidental sense, because normally I'd be playing in any given year, I'd be playing retro festivals with Nick Kershaw or Howard Jones or Limahl or Paul Young or Tony Hadley. And I'd be touring around the country doing those things, and I wouldn't get as much time to spend on recording. But obviously, because of lockdown, the complete opposite has happened. And I've been able to concentrate much more on getting a brand new album together. I've released a couple of singles, 2 or 3 singles already that have done really, really well for me. And I'm, now beginning to get recognised again as a singer-songwriter, which is fantastic.
Lovely. So you've been a bit more studious, just working behind the scenes.
Very much. And obviously because of technology, you can get other musicians involved remotely, and you can get them online, and you can send them the track, and then they could add bass, guitar, and then send it back, and then I can change it again, and I can say, so the computer revolution as such with recording in particular has been an absolute revelation.
So your new album dropped this year. What's the album called, and what kind
the album's called Overblown Superstar, and it is a bit of a change for me. It's a country, Americana, folk, touches on gospel sometimes. It's quite laid back, and it's something that I've always wanted to do, because most of the time when I think of a song, I hear it in my head as a folk song, because I'm Scottish and I've been surrounded by folk music all my life, and my songs in my head always sound like that. And obviously when you're 23, 24, you turn them into a pop record, or you turn them into a rock record, or I've even had dance records that were hits. But this time round I thought, you know what, let's not do that. Let's make the record the way it originates in its truest form, and do it as a folk song. And that's what the album's going to be like.
Beautiful. And you've worked with Lynn Johnstone. She's a Scottish contemporary artist on the album as well.
Well, she's been my backing vocalist for many, many years. And what happened was I had this song called Sleeping on the Same Pillow, and originally it wasn't a duet. And because of the subject matter of the song, it's about a couple who are apart, who want to get back together again. It seemed prevalent and the right thing to do, and she sings it absolutely brilliantly.
Lovely. And it's currently doing the rounds on the Heritage charts, among other...
it's doing very well for me.
Great
It's in
stuff.
the top 10 as we speak.
Great stuff. Well, Owen Paul, thank you for accepting my invitation to appear on my featured show.
My pleasure.
And best of luck in all what you do.
Thank you so much, Dan.
Yeah, thank you very much. And
cheers now.
Bye for now. Thank you.